Hello everyone and welcome back for another edition of the Money Pros. I'm Oliver Tutt, certified financial planner practitioner and your host for the next half hour as we talk about the issues related to your money. How to make it, how to keep it, and hopefully how to help it grow. There's no greater potential threat to personal wealth than the cost of health care. Costs are rising quickly and insurance can be expensive and difficult to obtain. And now that the Affordable Care Act has become a reality, the landscape has changed radically. To help us make sense of it all will be Jason Lee, Senior Vice President of Broker Service Marketing Group. And later in our roundtable, we're very pleased to have Christine Ferguson, Director of Health Source Rhode Island, the state's new health insurance exchange. But first, I want to welcome back Greg Piccaro, CPA and partner with Trano Piccaro & Associates. Greg, we got a lot to talk about on the tax front with respect to health care this year. In the years that I've been looking at taxes in relation to financial planning, I can't think of many years where we had this much going on, particularly as it relates to health care.
That's true. That's true. There's a lot happening, and it's fairly complicated.
Now, we're talking specifically about the Affordable Care Act in your segment, and there's a lot going on with respect to how taxes are affected, some good, some bad. But let's talk about the good part of it. A big part of the Affordable Care Act are premium tax credits for individuals to potentially offset the cost of coverage. Can you give us an outline of how that might work?
Well, as I went through, and it was fun preparing for this show, Oliver, because it's as clear as mud out there, I got to tell you. But the eligibility is relatively straightforward. You have to be a U.S. citizen. Your income, depending on family size, has to range between $11,000 and $94,000. Your employer can't provide health coverage, and you have to buy the insurance on the exchange. So the eligibility is fairly straightforward. The credit's a little bit of a mystery because it took me a while to figure out how that credit's going to work.
But it could be substantial.
But it could be substantial. I ran a test for a family of 4 making $85,000 with adult children. And the total premium was about $17,000, and the credit was about 56%, 55% of the total premium cost, which translated into a monthly premium net $675 a month. Still a lot of money, but much better than over $1,000. So it's a very powerful credit.
So this is the translation of what the Affordable Care Act, part of what it was attempting to do is at least initially subsidize a substantial amount for lower income people of the cost of insurance coverage.
It's a significant subsidy.
So here's one of the unusual things, and I can't right off the top of my head think of another example of this, but typically with a tax credit, you know, whatever your expenses are up front, you pay for them during the year, and if there's a credit involved at the end of the year, maybe based on college tuition or something along those lines, you get the credit back when you file your tax return, right? That's typically how it works.
That's true.
Not in this case. There's the potential that you could actually be advanced the credit along the way during the tax year. Can you explain that to us?
Well, this was designed to help making health care affordable on a month-to-month basis. So clearly waiting until the end of the year for many families is going to make it difficult for that.
If you don't have the money, you don't
Right.
have the money.
So they developed a system whereby, depending on your income, you'll be advanced the credit. Now, the trouble is that income is going to be an estimate. So my recommendation to the viewers is estimate your income a little higher, because at the end of the next year, when you have to reconcile the subsidy you received versus your income, if you are not eligible for the credit you received, you have to pay it back. So you want to be sure that you're not behind the 8 ball. So even though it might be tempting to go in and say, well, my income's only going to be $50,000 this year, even though you think it's going to be $70,000, you're going to get a big benefit up front, and there's going to be a day of reckoning at the end when you file your income tax return. It will adversely affect your refund if you have one coming, or you'll have to pay the balance due. So it's really important that you try to estimate. And in talking with people, this has been the most challenging thing for them, especially if they're self-employed. Well, they don't really know what their income's going to be in 2014. Even though they could look back as a reasonable basis, no one knows. You know, you're self-employed, I'm self-employed, you know, good years, bad years, you never know what's going to happen. So it's going to be a challenge. So put some thought into it. That's all I could say.
You're going to potentially, as you're saying, have to be a little more self-aware of what your tax return looks like than maybe you have been in previous years. A lot of times you do that tax return, you don't think a lot about what the numbers look like, but that's going to have major ramifications when you have the reconciliation going forward. Now, another concept of the Affordable Care Act is minimum essential coverage, and something that's referred to on the IRS website and in some other places as a shared responsibility payment. Can you outline exactly what this is and who might be affected by it?
That's a nice spin, you know, on the fact that
shared
responsibility payment's a good spin. But basically what's going to happen if you don't have a sufficient type of insurance policy that will cover, and from what I can see, almost everything that's going to be on the market is going to meet that minimum coverage requirement, especially if you buy it through an exchange. you're going to pay a penalty starting in 2014 will start very low at $95 per adult.
If you don't have coverage.
If you don't have coverage. So there'll be a new form coming out. I think it's 1095A next year to tell the government, hey, they did have insurance, this family or this person, and that's going to be the basis by which I think the penalty will be assessed. A lot of this, I'm anxious to see how it's going to all flow through the tax system to the IRS, how they're going to reconcile all this. As you know, Massachusetts did this several years ago. They have a 1099 health care that they reconcile against Massachusetts resident returns to see if they have health insurance. So it's not a brand new concept, but it'd be interesting to see how the federal government pulls it together.
So this is really the carrot and the stick. We talked about the carrot earlier on, significant credits, and the stick is potentially if you don't have insurance, there's going to be a penalty.
The dilemma is the stick's not big enough.
Right.
You know, the penalty even in 2016 only goes up to a little over $2,000 per family. So depending on how all this proceeds, perhaps the stick's going to have to get bigger.
All right, I'm going to have to hold you there. For more information on the tax implications of the Affordable Care Act, please visit our website at foxprovidence.com/themoneypros to view a replay of this segment. Up next on The Money Pros, Jason Lee, Senior Vice President of Broker Service Marketing Group, to discuss the ins and the outs of the long-term care insurance marketplace. So stay with us. There's a lot more to come right here on The Money Pros. Welcome back to The Money Pros. Today's show is focused on healthcare, and with us now to discuss the landscape of the long-term care insurance marketplace is our insurance pro, Jason Lee, Senior Vice President with Broker Service Marketing Group. Jason, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Oliver.
So long-term care insurance is a form of health insurance, but it's not what people think about when they think about traditional health insurance. When we talk about traditional health insurance versus long-term care, where does traditional health insurance leave off and long-term care pick up? Because they cover distinctly separate things.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about that, Oliver, is traditional health insurance is for when you're sick or you're getting better. Long-term care insurance is really for when you can no longer take care of yourself, and if you're facing assisted living in the long run, you're facing nursing care in the long run, or even home health care in the long run, but you really can't take care of yourself anymore. Broadly, that's the difference.
So when you say on the long term, we're talking 30, 60, 90 days, a year,
Correct.
2 years, 5 years. It often comes later in life, obviously.
Yeah, for most people, it comes later in life. Yep.
Health insurance is oftentimes provided by an employer. Obviously, the Affordable Care Act addresses people that aren't able to get it through an employer, and it addresses a lot of other things as well. Long-term care insurance is not typically offered by an employer, although there are some instances where it can be an employee benefit. Generally speaking, where does one get long-term care insurance?
Most commonly, you're going to be talking to an agent who's going to sell you an individual policy. So this is someone who's licensed to sell health insurance products in the state that you live in. You're going to be buying an individual policy. There are situations where small business owners will buy a corporately owned policy, and that's a pretty common practice because you can deduct it through the business depending on the structure of the company. You can get a tax advantage to that, but most people are going to go out and try to find the best product to fit their needs on an individual basis.
Now, there are also sometimes like affinity programs. I know like
Right.
AARP has one. There are probably some other organizations. Does that make sense as an option to look into if
Yeah.
you're in the long-term care market?
Absolutely. Two big important things to remember there. So discounted programs if you're a member of an association like AARP or AAA, and also if you have a spouse, you can get actually a really nice discount if both spouses apply, or just by having a spouse, you can get a discount.
And just quickly, there's not a lot of insurance companies in this marketplace, unlike maybe some other areas like life insurance that people are more familiar with. What are some of the major carriers? Not necessarily an exhaustive list, but who are the names that are typically most frequently mentioned in this marketplace?
Sure. The market leader is Genworth.
Okay.
They're out of Virginia. Mass Mutual is a player. Transamerica, Mutual of Omaha are some of the bigger names that people are going to be familiar with that are in that marketplace.
Now, healthcare costs, and that's a big part of what we're talking about here today, are rising exponentially. Costs from everything from doctors to hospitals, medications, everything related to the healthcare industry, costs are exploding. How is that impacting the long-term care insurance marketplace? What's going on with premiums? Is that having an effect?
Yeah, so if you look at the last 20 years in long-term care insurance, people who bought policies and held on to them, their costs did go up and are going to continue to go up as the cost of care goes up. I think one of the biggest mistakes the insurance companies made is they underpriced their policies and didn't start raising prices soon enough. they waited and waited and waited and tried to hold out, and then had massive price increases, like a 20 or 30 or 40 or 50% price increase, because they can't just increase your plan like your employer sponsored health insurance. They have to file it with the state. It's a pretty expensive and exhaustive process. So I think the mistake they made was not making small incremental increases, but waiting too long and having these dramatic increases. So it has scared a lot of people off, and it's also made, as you pointed out, made a lot of companies exit the marketplace.
And not unlike a lot of other types of coverage, just because you buy it at a particular age and in a particular health class doesn't necessarily mean that premium can't go up. The insurance company does, there's some serious restrictions placed on them, but the insurance company can and will raise the cost of that premium if they feel the need to, right?
Yeah, if the experience they have with the class that you're in justifies them raising the price, absolutely, they're going to file with the state and raise the price.
How is the long-term care marketplace changing, maybe the products, the carriers themselves, changing to adapt to the rising costs, the changing landscape, what we're talking about today?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most exciting things going on right now with the marketplace. There's a lot of new tools that people can use where there are fixed prices for a fixed amount of benefit. So you can know that whatever you put into the product, they can actually fix your price for a guaranteed fixed amount of benefit. And there's also products that have liquidity so that you can get your money back if you don't need the care or don't want the care, and products that even offer a death benefit as well. So one of the big issues that a lot of consumers have with long-term care is not only can my price go up, but if I don't need the care, the money that I put into it is gone.
Right.
So really exciting new solutions out there now. So definitely folks should talk to their financial advisors, their insurance agents about the newer solutions that are available, because this really is probably one of the biggest financial dilemmas we have in this country is how to take care of.
But you really got to do your research, because there's
Yep.
a lot of different options out there and they're only increasing. So it's up to the consumers to figure that out. Obviously, good insurance agents can be able to help you with that. If you'd like more information on long-term care insurance, please visit our website, foxprovidence.com. Click on the Money Pros. Next up, our roundtable. I'm joined by both Greg and Jason, and we're going to welcome Christine Ferguson. She's the director of HealthSource RI, the state's new health insurance exchange. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned. There's a lot more to come right here on the Money Pros. Welcome back to the Money Pros. Today's topic is health insurance, and on the roundtable with me today are Greg Picaro, CPA and partner with Atranda Picaro & Associates, Jason Lee, Senior Vice President with Broker Service Marketing Group, and also joining us is our special guest. She's Christine Ferguson, Director of HealthSource RI. Christine, thanks for being on the Money Pros.
It's great to be here.
All right, let's jump right into it. What is HealthSource Rhode Island, and how is it connected with the Affordable Care Act? Two things that are in the news quite a bit lately.
So I think you heard earlier about how it's connected. It's a way to get tax credits, but it's also a way to buy health insurance for anybody, whether or not they get a tax credit, and for small businesses. The other component is that we offer a range of support services through a call center and through a website that really anybody in the state can use if they're having trouble with their insurance.
So it's not just a website. It's people you can talk to live.
Yep.
It's people you can go visit, I
Absolutely.
believe. Right?
Absolutely.
And it's the marketplace that people can now enter into to acquire coverage.
Right, and they can be certain that there's been negotiation and discussion with the health plans, and when we get complaints, we help resolve those.
Okay. Another thing that's been in the news quite a bit is the launch of healthcare.gov, which is the federal government's health insurance marketplace. Now, HealthSource RI is a result of Rhode Island opting out of that federal marketplace and creating their own. A lot of the news has talked about, at least initially, how unsuccessful the rollout of healthcare.gov was. Generally speaking, how is the rollout of HealthSource RI been?
We've had bumps and glitches along the way, but we haven't been down. We've been able to work with people all the way through the process. So we've done fairly well, and I always look for a piece of wood to knock on because it's only been 8 weeks. So there are always things that are going to go wrong. We have a good backup plan and redundancies built in. So the governor and the lieutenant governor made the decision to do this at the state level, and it's paid off so far.
Can you share with us any information on how many people have visited the site, or how many people have signed up for insurance, or any kind of metrics on how it's being used?
We've had almost 150,000 website visits, roughly, and We've had, this week, I think a couple of days, we had almost 3,000 phone calls, or 2,500 to 3,000 phone calls in a day, and up to 200 people, 150 or 200 people walking in. So it's been very widely looked at, and people are coming through. We won't really know what the first year's enrollment is going to look like for individuals until the end of March.
Okay. All right.
I got a question about our company. We're a 55-person organization, and so our staff comes in. We have our meeting with Blue Cross, and we're talking about the plan. And it always comes up, what do we need to know? We have a plan that exempts us from having to participate, but what should our staff know about HealthSource RI? We're a Rhode Island-based company with the staff with a lot of questions about it, and I don't always know what answers to give.
So for your staff, where you have more than 50 employees, right now you can't use the exchange. And it's too bad. If you had 50 or fewer employees, you'd be able to come to the exchange, buy a product, and then whatever that contribution is that you would normally make as an employer, your employees would be able to look at all 16 plans, whether it's a Blue Cross plan, a United plan, or a neighborhood health plan, and they could choose to get better coverage or lesser coverage depending on what they need. So I'm sorry you can't come in yet, but maybe next year. But for the rest of it, what they should know is that as we go along throughout the course of this year and next, they'll be able to really begin to understand a little bit more about how their choices actually affect the cost of healthcare and how those choices can actually lead to better health outcomes and in addition to lower costs. So I think that there's going to be a lot of empowerment that comes out of this, but it's going to take a year or two to get there.
Now, on a different note, I'm a CPA, so I'm a numbers guy.
Yep.
So I know that the state invested, with the federal government's help, a fair amount, and has done, from what I could see, a great job getting this off and running. Had a chance to visit the site. There's so much information there, so viewers should definitely take a look. So what's going to happen? What are the state's plans for funding this in the future when the federal government kind of walks away?
Right. So the plan all along was that over time, the state-based exchanges, as well as the federal-based exchanges, frankly, have to be self-sustaining. So there are a variety of things that we can do. The legislature and the governor are working with us now to look at the different options. Most states did some kind of an assessment, either broadly based on all claims, because right now small businesses are the ones that bear the burden of most of the taxes and assessments. And so spreading that across the entire population makes a whole lot more sense. But anything from that to revenue raisers like advertising and potentially matching up with other quasi-publics in the state. There are a bunch of different things that we could do.
Is there a set
in terms
point
of
where,
funding.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but is there a set point where federal funding does run out and the
Yeah,
state
federal
has to figure it
funding
out?
at this point, although I can tell you that we had a phone call with the White House a couple of days ago, and one of the biggest problems for us is that all the negative press at the federal level has affected people's people are skeptical and they don't know the difference between what's happening in Rhode Island and what's happening federally. Right. So that's going to affect us. And so one of the things that we're talking about is the possibility of extending some of those dollars through 2015. But in any case, we really need to make the decision this year about how the funding is going to go, how the funding is going to work going forward. And you can look at a range of cost from $17 to $20 million a year, or if we don't want to do some of the things that we're trying to do to actually lower costs in the long run, right, it can just be a system that processes claims. So,
Jason, with about 45 seconds, we got time for one more question.
Yeah, I just read that Rhode Island was one of the states that did not allow or opt into President Obama's request to allow these previously disqualified plans to come back in. Just
right.
Some thoughts on why that is.
So very briefly, we're very different than Texas. the kinds of plans that are offered in
Really?
Texas.
We got to do a show on that.
That would be fun. The kinds of plans that are offered in Texas, for example, are very different than what's up here.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, what would have had to happen, and you're going to see most states, I think, come to the conclusion that this is not a great idea. So what would have had to happen is all the plans would have had to be refiled. We would have had to recalculate all of the rates. And to do that in the middle of the time when people are signing up and they know what the prices are, to turn around and then switch.
Not a good idea.
It
Not
doesn't-
something that
doesn't
sounded
make
like
sense.
insurance companies wanted any
And
part of, right? They'd kind of
and
thrown
the
all that stuff
insurance,
out.
our
and-
carriers have been very, very collaborative, and they weren't interested either.
We're going to hold on to you because we're going to give you one more question. But for more information on HealthSource Rhode Island or any other topic that you've heard today, please visit our website at foxprovidence.com. Up next, we'll have one last question for Christine Ferguson. There's still more to come, so stay with us. Right back here on the Money Pros. Welcome back to the Money Pros. Our special guest today has been Christine Ferguson, Director of HealthSource Rhode Island, the state's new health insurance exchange. I've got one last question. People have a lot of questions. They're hearing about HealthSource Rhode Island on the news. You have a large ad campaign going on. It's certainly a phrase people are hearing about a lot. If people want to learn more about what's available to them in the healthcare arena in HealthSource Rhode Island, what are their options?
There are three options. You can go to the website, which is healthsourceri.gov. You can make a phone call to our call center, and the number for that is 1-855-840-4774. And I know you said you would
We're
put it
going
on
to
the
put that
website.
on the website.
And you can also walk in to our offices to get to get information and also to sign up. And that's 70 Royal Little Drive in Providence, which is I always like to say it's the exit that Benny's is at. But it's
Okay.
on the other side. It's near AAA. You know.
That'll keep all the
There's
people
no
from
Dunkin'
Massachusetts
Donuts.
out of that.
There's no Dunkin' Donuts right there. The one other thing that I just wanted to add for people, because there are a lot of questions about what if my income changes. What I'm
With respect to the tax credits.
I'm on commission. I never know what's going to happen. You can change your income throughout the year. You just have to come to us and say, okay, I think I'm going to make a little bit more than I thought, and we'll adjust the tax credit right there so that you don't have this big
Accumulated
reckoning
liability.
at the end
Yeah.
at the
But
end of the year.
you have to watch it. So there's a lot of HealthSource RI is a lot more than just a website.
Absolutely.
A lot of resources for people to get more information and actually to acquire competitive coverage. That's it for today's show. If you've got a question about your money, let us know by visiting our website, foxprovidence.com/themoneypros, and click on Ask the Pros or post on our Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. If we answer your question on the air, we'll send you one of our very own Money Pros piggy banks. That's it for today's show. Thanks for watching. We hope you'll join us again next time right here on the Money Pros.